Okay, let's do a bit of review that when the Navi Micha said that, so he spoke about she'eris nachalosai. So she'eris nachalosai, just very quickly recoup, doesn't mean as it's always translated to the remnant of his inheritance, but she'eris is the extension. Let's not call it al tikre remnant, Allah extension. So fascinating that that the human being, which is so much different than HaKadosh Baruch Hu, could actually be considered an extension of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And the logic is clear, because since HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the simple logic, so to speak, is that since HaKadosh Baruch Hu created a neshama, or whatever it might mean, of himself, on the nafach medilei kanafach, Hashem created the man with his own breath, whatever that means, whatever it means, that's what it says, that we were created with the breath of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So now, on the nafach medilei kanafach, the Zohar says, we're part of that, and since we're part of that, we're thereby an extension. Like a child is an extension of yourself. It's not just, if you have a child, it's not just somebody you have to take care of, or somebody, it's an actual extension.
The foot of his father.
Foot of his father. Yeah. Kare, the knees. Ra kare Devorah. Son at the knees of the father. You know what I mean? Because your knees are that which picks you up, and that lets you go down. It's your knees, not just your feet. So the son has the koach. You feel this when you're ba'avelis. The son has the koach to lift up. And the neshama, bra, kare Devorah, as a koach of lifting up or bringing down. The knees is a joint, up and down. Okay, so the first yesod that we learned is that basically everybody in Klal Yisrael is connected to Hashem as almost like nerve endings are connected. And then we spoke about yesterday that it's even deeper than that, and that is that really everybody comes from the same neshama, which I said yesterday I was looking for a makar. Like, is there a makar? Everyone says K'maisha Amru HaMakubalim. I just saw Rabbi Aaron Cutler this morning in the Maimer. It says Kfar Amru Kad Moinenu. Everybody comes from one neshama. So the earliest I could find it is right here. This seems to be the makar, which is good. This, if the Arizal said it, that would be makar. It's the Rebbe there, Arizal, was saying it. So there's this idea that everybody comes from one neshama. Hashem made an Adam. Only made one Adam, really, by in terms of Hashem creating a person. He created one Adam and one neshama. So just like physically, everybody in the human race has come from Adam Arishan. And the Babis will say, oh, he has his eyes and his nose and his teeth and his personality and his sense of humor. So the same things with the neshamas, and the neshama people broke up into millions and millions of pieces, and that's our neshama. But there is, since we all came from exactly the same neshama, there is something which is pulling these pieces of the neshama to each other. So there's a connection. Just like al pi mashal, you find a connection to a brother and sister, even if they don't know they're brothers and sisters. There's some kind of a connection that's there because they came from one place. There's a certain regesh, twins, etc. So I spoke yesterday about the Kedushas Levi, and the Kedushas Levi, which takes it to a very far degree, says that when the Ger asked Hillel, convert me teach me the whole Torah while I'm standing on one foot. So he told him the whole Torah is, if you hate it, don't do it to somebody else. So the normal way of learning that is, well, how would you like it if he did it to you? That's what the kids always say, right? How would you like it? Meaning when you think of it, it's almost like a shear. Like, how do you know if it's a good thing to do or not? Well, how would you like it? So if you don't like it, probably he doesn't like it, so don't do it. Well, who cares what he likes or he doesn't like? Easy, it not me. So the answer is, says the Kedushas Levi, that he was teaching the ger is that it's much deeper than that. It's not just like, how would you like it? It's that if it hurts you, then by hurting him, it is hurting you. Because we're all connected that way, mimachsavecha, much deeper idea. So everybody's heard, my father used to say all the time that, like nobody could sit in a rowboat and say, look, I'm digging a hole, I'm cutting, drilling a hole under my own seat, it's none of your business. But, we're all in the same boat. But this is even deeper than that, that it's not just that you're drilling a hole under my seat, I'm drilling a hole under your seat. It's all one boat, is the pshat that the people, we're all connected. What are you doing? You can't hurt yourself. You can't hurt yourself and say, well, it's none of your business, because by hurting yourself, you're hurting me. Say somebody in a family hurts themselves, hurts the whole family. It's not if somebody in Klal Yisrael hurts themselves spiritually or physically, it hurts the whole family. So that's what Hillel was teaching the ger, that there's no such thing as hurting yourself, or there's no such thing as not caring about another person, because it's all one thing. On some level, not on every level, on some level, it's all one thing, and that thing is called the neshama haklalis.
That's what it says when there's a divorce, Hashem cries. The
same idea. Same idea. So, let's go a little bit further. Kach adamim chavera. Everybody have it? Kol Yisrael heim she'er basar elu im elu. What's important to understand, according to everything we learned for the last couple of times, is that every Jew is an extension of another. So this is not just a feel-good unity speech. This is there's actually a spiritual connection between all people, by the way, not just Jews, but Jews have a stronger connection. Just like brothers and sisters have a stronger connection, and just like twins have a stronger connection, and the strongest connection apparently is a husband and wife. Because there it says, share basar, ki share basarly. There actually is an extension. If it's right, there we know already about the two halves of neshamas coming to become one neshama. So just extend that concept out. So there's different levels of it, but Kol Yisrael hem she'er basar elu imelu mipnei sha'neshama is klulas yachad. So those four words is, as I say, I think the source, a neshama is klulas yachad. Yesh bezeh chelik zeh ubezeh chelik zeh. So my neshama, if you have part of my neshama and I have part of your neshama, we're kind of interwoven. So there is no such thing as it's not my business, it's not your business. My business is your business is my business.
It's very prevalent here in Eretz Israel too. Everybody's business is everybody's
business. Not your own business. Yeah, I think it's like an interesting halachic issue that there's a chiyuv of, just something to think about, there's a chiyuv of teichacha. You see somebody doing something wrong, you're supposed to tell them. Okay, there's halachas. You don't tell him if you're going to embarrass him. You don't tell him he's not going to listen, maybe. There's all kinds of dinim. We're not going into the halachas now. This is important. The Chassam Sofer writes that this is one of the most complex halachas that there is, the union of teichacha. Normally, you learn the pshat in teichacha. Why do I have a chiyuv to tell you that you're doing something wrong? So it's a sort of a din. This is a regular way of learning it. There's sort of a din that I have the responsibility to in other words, help you. I have a responsibility to help you. I have a responsibility to help somebody else. But once we understand that the chiyuv, and this is what the Rishonim say, that the chiyuv ocheach toichiach es amisecha comes from the concept of Kol Yisrael Arevim Zeh B'zeh. It's not an independent concept. That I have to help you is not just, okay, you see somebody doing something wrong, lo samoid al tamriach. Ocheach toichiach es amisecha. It's a deeper thing than that. Kol Yisrael Arevim Zeh B'zeh means we're the same. Like I have to give myself Moser, I have to give you Moser. That I have to stop myself from being in danger, I have to stop you from being in danger, whether it's a physical danger or a spiritual danger. So the Kol Yisrael Arevim Zeh B'zeh is not so much that I have to make sure you don't hurt yourself. It's a different thing, that if I allow you to hurt yourself, I'm the one who's getting hurt. It's really a very selfish idea. The connection between the neshamas is so that it would be silly to let somebody else do something wrong, because then you're letting him make a hole under his seat in the boat. So it's not just like being very altruistic, look, I don't want you to hurt yourself, stop making that hole under your seat in the boat. No. The pshat is that, like, hello, you're hurting the whole klal. So it's just important thing to understand. There's a responsibility of the Klal Yisrael Arevim. So I said yesterday that in Hebrew, the word for a basket is an areva. So that's a number of random pieces of straw, which some person is coming, some old lady is coming and weaving them together, a basket weaver. So the basket weaver, which was the the art du jour of the 60s, to be a basket weaver, right? Like the omek of it was to weave the world. It was symbolic of weaving the world together. But now, if you pull out one of these pieces of straw, the basket might still have some integrity, but it's going to be less. It's going to have less integrity. It's not going to be as resilient. It's not going to be as waterproof. But it's just one piece in the shkifarlich, But it's not going to have the same. Maybe there was an extra one in there. On the other hand, you'll find that one piece of straw out in the street someplace, it has nothing to do with the basket. It's just a piece of grass. It's just a random piece of straw. So if you're talking about the integrity of every Jew, so if you're looking at it in a deep way, it's not just that, like, I'm caring about you. You're ruining the integrity of the entire basket. The whole areva is missing in its integrity. So the Kol Yisrael Arevim Zeh B'Zeh is automatically Machayev Teichacha, and it's automatically Machayev Loisamid Adam Riyacha. And it's all it automatically comes from the fact that Hashem created only one person, not even Chava. He created Adam. From Adam came Chava, so it's all coming from Adam. There was only one neshama. From that one neshama comes everything. So it's all one thing. There are no independent concepts. So from the point of view of the individual, if you get pulled out of the basket, if you pull yourself out of the basket, then you're totally random. you have no mashmos. Right? You're nothing. It's just a piece of straw. You're only something with the crowd. But from the point of view of the crowd, so there's a chiyuv one on the other. And if the crowd is together, and this is the next point that he's making, if the crowd is together, or let's take the basket, if all the pieces are in place, and we're checking the integrity of everything, so it becomes, it could be a basket, it could be a very sophisticated, jet engine. Like, all the pieces have to work together, and all the pieces have to work in unison. Like, if you take out one screw and say, all right, it's just a screw, this might get you over to Pacific. This is not budget. You don't know which screw is a main cog. L'chorah, everything is there for a reason. Or everything is there for the reason. So it's understanding that every neshama is there for a reason. Every piece of the neshama is another piece of the neshama. I always looked at it since I'm a child. I looked at it like missing a piece of the puzzle. Like, literally, if you're doing a puzzle with your kid, 10-piece puzzle, 2,000-piece puzzle. If you're doing a piece of the puzzle, you can have 2,000. You have 1999 pieces. If there's one piece missing, you're not going to frame it and hang it up on the wall. It just messes up the whole thing. One hole in the boat, right? And it's just a very strong mashal. How 10,000 piece puzzle. One piece is one piece. And the puzzle doesn't have its shleimus, hence the chiyuvim. On a positive note, so you have the inyan of, now that we're a basket, now that we're woven together, now that we're at Sibor, so you have a completely different koach than the koach of Ra. So I just point out something very interesting here. Have to down with a minyan. How do you know a minyan is 10? Because it says the word Ada. And where do we see that Ada is 10?
Korah. No,
Meraglim. Wrong of here. Also by Korah it says Ada on Moshe. But we learn it from the meraglim. So it's like a pella. No, is it a pella? Okay, Xeris HaKasav, that's the way the Pesukah work. But is it a pella that we learn they have to daven for minyan from the meraglim? Like, there's no better place to learn that you have to daven with a minyan except for the 10 people came to Eretz Yisrael and sinned. So, like, Bakesher, Avera, and Mitzvah. I mean, in the Pashat of Shem, what's the kasher? Okay, so there here it says Eta, there it says Eta Kadosha. Yeah. So from the Meragel we learned that the Shechina Shari Ba'aser. It's a pella. It's a pella that it should come from a negative place. But once you understand this, it's not such a pella, because the point is that somehow or another 10, we'll talk about it in a second, but somehow together, the Gzeres HaKosav tells us by the Meraglim, when they come together, so there's it means that that's already a full basket. That's a full basket. Once it's a full basket, we understand. It's in other words, if one person would have gone into Eretz Yisrael and been Meragel al Oretz, so there's an individual that's Meragel al Oretz. So somebody does. We always know this. But once it comes together as a group, and the Torah's Megalit group, it's not any longer it's an individual. It's a group. It's a paradigm shift. It's a different place Lagamri. So once it's in a different place Lagamri, once it's in Areva, we can understand what's the difference between Ra and Toiv. We see that 10 is a kehilla. You with me on this?
Take away Yosef and Reuven from the Shvatim, there's the 10 also.
Yeah. So the Talmud says like this. V'lachein v'lkach eino doimim rubim ha'osim es ha'mitzvah choza mipnei kalulusam eino doimim rubim ha'osim es ha'mitzvah. As Rashi brings in Parshas B'chukoisai, by the blessings that Hashem will give us if we do His ratzon. So there it says that it'll be such that when you, Klal Yisrael, will go to war against your enemies, Rotfu mikem chamisha meya, 5 of you will be able to chase 100. Okay, we saw this with our own eyes, right? And what's the rest of the pasuk? Umeya mikem, and if you've got 100, Revava. How much is Revava? 10,000. So where's the math here?
No ratio.
Where's the math? What's the math of the pasuk? 5 of you.
This is 1 to 4.
What?
And the first one is 1 to 4.
It's 1 to 4. So now if you have 100,
So it's times 100.
so what should it be?
It should be 400.
2,000.
2,000.
2,000, I think.
Yeah.
So where do we get to 10,000? That's Rashi's kasha on the pasuk. He really read this stuff, right? So Rotlu mikem chamisha meya. So 5 can chase 100, and 100 are running away from 5, right? Israeli soldiers. That's the bracha. Now let's say what happens if you put 100 soldiers. So it should be now 100. So it should be 2,000 people running away. No, Revava, 10,000 people are running away. Comes Rashi and he says a chiddush. Einoi doime muatim ha'osin es hamitzvah l'merubim ha'osin es hamitzvah, because it's an exponential growth. It's a
Geometric.
Right. It's geometric, but there's numbers here. There's a diuk of numbers. 5 will do 100, but somehow or another, when you get to 100, so now it's not equal any longer. You have you're in a whole different paradigm. So now that you're in a different paradigm, so you get up to 10,000. You could just say the numbers are just numbers, but you would think it has to, God knows math, right? You would think it has to work. So Rashi makes this point of inodoma. You can't compare. So so we always know this klal from that pasuk that when you push with the crowd. But a crowd of in the case of the pasuk, a crowd of 100 is not 100 times 1. This is the point. A crowd of 100 is geometrically stronger than 100 times 1. You can't just take the power of one person and say if one person could push in a door a little bit, so 100 people could push in a door 100 times more than that. No. That's what Rashi says, that if one person or 5 people can chase 100, so 100 people can chase 10,000.
The whole is greater than the sum of its parts.
That's correct. The whole is greater than the sum of its parts. So it's like the who. There's this idea of a crowd has a koach mitzad, and a yachid doesn't have that koach. What? So now, I believe he's saying something deep. You can't read it too quick. Why is this? So he says, Zeh mipnei kalalusim. Why is this? Why is the whole larger than the sum of its parts? Why is it when there's a crowd, you have an exponential difference, a gestalt, a stronger amount of strength than you have if you just have that amount of individuals? So Zeh mipnei kalalusim. It's because of what we learned yesterday that because everybody's connected by the neshama. So how does that explain? Somebody help me here. How does that explain? So the Gemara says, like, if you want to boil up water, it takes 10 minutes to boil up water. So if you put the pot on the water for a minute, so you did 1/10 of the boiling. So take it off for 10 minutes, and then put it on for another minute. You're never going to get there. It doesn't need 1 times 10; it needs 10. So how does the fact? Let's just understand that. How does the fact that all the neshamas are connected at the hip? How does that create a situation where 100 neshamas are exponentially stronger than 100 individuals? So I think that Doran's the answer, because if we say the sum is greater than the whole of its parts, that's only talking about if the neshamas can somehow be mischaber echad l'hasheni. What makes 100 people pushing into a crowd pushing instead of 100 individuals? There has to be some kind of a kesher with them. They have to be pushing in the same direction. Probably they have to be pushing for the same cause, and they have to be somehow connected in the physical world. What happens in the world of Ruchnius is that the very fact that the neshamas are able to be mischaber ela im ela gives you a tremendous amount of koach. That's the connection. What is the koach that 100 has, which is not 100? It can already hit 10,000. The answer is that it's not 100 any longer. It's a neshama shalema. You have to be machadish that there's a chibur between the neshamas in order to say that there's this extra strength. If you'll say, we have an army, they say, I hope it's still true, but I'm just saying it as a mashal, but they say the difference between, let's say the Israeli army and the U.S. army is we're all fighting for the same cause. As I up their belt. Or you could possibly put 20,000 people in Iraq, and during the Gulf War, but ostensibly they're fighting in the same direction, but you don't know. Like this one has this idea, that one has that idea. So historically, there's a great unity here in the cause of the Israeli army. As soon as we saw a disunity, so you could have the same amount of people, it doesn't make any difference. They've got to have the same cause. They have the same. So now when you're pushing not against an enemy and not against a wall, not trying to open up a door, but you're trying to open up the doors of Shemayim. So when you're trying to open up the doors of Shemayim, so the kalalusim, Zeh mipnei kalalusim, the connection of the neshamas is what gives it not just the same cause, but actually connected. Kulam mimach savecha, kulam neshama achas. You have to say that piece. Lakach Pirshu Chazal is another example. Ala nimna me'asar rishonim b'beis haknesses. You come to Shul, so the Gemara tells us that it's gevaldik to be from the first 10. Get there early. Be from the first 10. And then the Gemara says, strangely, afilu meya boi macharav mekabel schar keneged kulam. Now, even if 100 comes, so you get schar kneged kulam. So says the Talmud Devorah, Chiddush meya mamish k'mashma. It doesn't just say meya; it really means meya. It really means 100. We'll explain why. Mipnei she'asara hem klulim elu be'elu, because we have a chiddush from the Meraglim that 10 is already a number. Just like we said, husband and wife is one thing, family is another thing, cousins is another thing. There's different levels of connectivity between people. So in neshamas, 10 is already a zach. 10 is, that's what the Meraglim were machadish. We see 10 as a basket. Little basket, but a basket. So be from those, this is what the Gemara is saying, be from those that make the basket, not from those that are extensions to the basket, or in the basket, or using the basket, or making the basket bigger. Okay, you want to be part of the basket itself. That basket, we learned yesterday in Kedusha's Levi, is called Shechina. Shechina is the kehilla. Shechina is nukva, lashon the kehilla. Shechina is the nukva, it's the kehilla which is holding the Devorah Hashem, which is holding the creation, holding the ruach of Hashem. So it's the kehilla. So you have to say this kalalusam. So, I'll show you something in Rav Kook. Einaya. The Gemara says, on Mem Zayin, Mem Zayin on the base. The Gemara says as follows: Amar Rabbi Shimon Levi, Lo'olam Yashkim. This is what the Ramak is referring to. Lo'olam Yashkim Adam LeBeis HaKnesses. Should go early to Shul Kadesh Yizke VeYimna Im Asara Harishonim. Shafilu Mea Boim Achrav Kibel Schar Kulam. The Gemara Schar Kulam, you take away their schar Salkadaitach Ela Eba Noisnim Lo Schar Keneged Kulam. You'll get as much schar as everybody. Without you, who created the basket, so it would be a bunch of individuals. That's the way I'm understanding it. Whereas now, you're creating such a thing called a group. This is, we've got to be careful with this, because I think that we're so used to hearing about group and the unity, and that our minds automatically go to a shallow place. He's not saying anything shallow over here. He's saying that the first 10 create a group. We've now moved on from being 9 individual. Anybody who's waited for a minyan knows this feeling. Right? 9 people, 9 individuals. Almost have a kli. Almost have a kli is nothing. It's about to go home. Once the 10th man walks in, you can feel something. What are you feeling? We've now become a group. We can now say Yehi Shmer Abba Mevorach. We can now say Baruch Hu Hashem Mevorach. Those are only things that a group can do. They're not things that 10 individuals can do. That's why there's halachas that sometimes people are not mitzaref to a minyan. Thank you. It's a I always wonder about this. I know that where I grew up in Buffalo, so before I was born, there was a very chashuv rav, or blach. It was like a gadol. He wrote a lot of svarim on halacha, and he wasn't the rav of a shul. I'm not sure what he was doing there altogether, but he was a rav. He was a guy who wore a frock, had like would we wear a frock, so you round off one of the corners, there shouldn't be chayv tzitzis. He was a guy who walked around with tzitzis on his frock. He was that type of a person. So people, people. I mean, until today they talk about him as like a gadol that lived there. He wasn't the rav of a shul. He had a minyan in his house, and he was very careful who he allowed into this minyan. It was very didn't let everybody go on daven in the minyan. He was very careful. So I could remember that at my grandfather's levaya, I remember as a kid. So like the big shvach that one of the rabbanim said is that he was allowed into a blach's minyan. That was the shvach. He was allowed into that minyan, meaning that there was this idea, not like. On Yom Kippur, so we say, Mutar Vadoli Spalali Mahav Rayonim. Seder, a special din of Yom Kippur. The Kadosh Baruch Hu looks at us all as holy, or being holy. But not Yom Kippur, there's the fabric, the very fabric of the basket that we're creating is different than these individuals. They have to be mischaber, and there has to be a certain koach to it, and a certain fabric to it. he was thinking that, I can't daven with just anybody. So somebody wasn't, what was the big thing in those days? Somebody was a Shomer Shabbos. Shomer Shabbos. So somebody was a Shomer Shabbos. He davened in the minyan. Somebody wasn't charging other people interest. Those were the Gedarim, I think. You don't charge other people interest. Lending money was a big thing to do. Like it was a davar pashut even when I was a kid. That okay, you'll give me back 5%, you'll give me back 10%. It's davar pashut. That's the way that's what Jews do. Until somebody came along and wrote a book about you're not supposed to do that. So ribbis. So the thing is ribbis. So the people did that.
Right next to the Shabbos.
Yeah, shatnez. So a few things, but that's the integrity. So we're talking about not the quantity of the amount of people. I think this is the nekuda here. We're talking about the quality, not the kamus, but the eichus of the amount of the people that are there that are making the shift from individuals to a klal. It's so important for us to understand. So I just want to read you a couple of lines here. Yisrain haklal al haprat. Hishanu medabrim, just a couple of lines. Ala hevdel hamini, the qualitative difference. Sheyesh bein erech haklal erech haprat, between an individual and a tzibur. It means to say between 10 individuals and a tzibur of 10 even. Iker hadavar munach b'hayisoid she'olav roi liyos misyachis hasgulas haklal. Yistram heima toisefes pratim shirak marbim es haklal b'kamus amagdilim es ha'echos. Right? So the first 10, the Asara Rishonim, created something new. There's something new. Everything that comes after that is making that something new bigger. But noitel schar kulam, or keneged schar kulam, is the pshat that you've created the kli. Avlenam koivim es ha'echos. The first 10 are koveya, what the quality of the integrity, the quality of the fabric of the minyan that we're making. Okay, Basher Yisoid Hatzibur Hu Minyan Asara. Now that we know from the Gzeres HaKosav that a tzibur is 10, Im Kain Asara Rishonim Yesh Lehem Hayitaron Shebiglalam Nikvas Hashlomas Hatfila B'Shem Avodas HaKlal. What happened? We're no longer a bunch of individuals, 8, 9, 10, 150. We're a minyan. That's why you have to be in the same room. That's why you have to daven. That's why you can't be sleeping. We're doing something together. There's an avodah of doing something together. There's a koach of a tzibur. Even if 100 come afterwards, the same. V'zeh yoyre ki hayitaron shebein min lemin, to take that kind of a paradigm shift, hu gadol be'ein aroch mehevdel hayitaron sheyesh be'oso min atzmo bein hamruba lahamuat. Gewalt. K'moshe bir b'kuzari. The Kuzari says, the famous Kuzari says that there's such a thing as a domain, a rock. And then from a rock you have a tzomeach, a plant, better than a rock, it's alive. But from a tzomeach you can move to a chai, an animal. From an animal, says the Kuzari, it's a whole different bria, a whole different breed. From a chai you can go to an adam. From an adam you can go to a medaber. Medaber you can go to a Yisrael, says the Kuzari. These are all paradigm shifts. And where do you go from there? To a tzibur. You go from there to a tzibur. A tzibur is a new thing. The difference between a rock and a plant is the difference between an individual and a tzibur. Paradigm shift. So it's not just a question where you push with the crowd. There's a certain... it's a whole different thing. It's a whole different thing. It's no longer about Eliezer stories. It's nobody has a name. Nobody has a name. It's Omer B'Yachad. Avodas Hatfila al kain behayos ha'asar rishonim meviim es ha'avodah shel hatfila el min shleimus hatziburi kol echad mehem noisnim lo yischar keneged kulam haboim achareihem she'em moisifin shleimus boisar min atzmai. So what made it into a tzibur, that's the asar rishonim. So that's what we have to understand, the asar rishonim. So you see a lot of things become quite clear, I think, that you see Moshe Rabbeinu, for instance, standing on Har Sinai. Klal Yisrael is doing Shlit'a Egel. Amar Hashem lech reid. Rashi says migdulascha. Klum nasati l'cha gedula ella b'shvil Yisrael. You don't have a people, so what are you doing here? You don't have a people, what are you doing here? But that's not what it says. You're only you because of them. If there's no them, then you're no longer you. It's not just you're a leader without a people. You're no longer a leader. You're no longer anybody special. The Barditchever touches b'shvil like shnei shvilim. B'shvil Yisrael. B'shvil Yisrael. Kol elam kulay b'spartus b'shvil chanina b'ni. B'shvil. Your road, your pipeline of energy is coming from Klal Yisrael. If you take away the Klal Yisrael, you're taking away what you are. So Moshe Rabbeinu's koach was only because he had a tzibur with him and behind him. You take away the tzibur, so he was a great man, great man, whatever he was, wherever he would be, we'd go to ask him advice and see his holy face. But he wouldn't be Moshe Rabbeinu. The koach of Moshe Rabbeinu is that he's standing with a tzibur. See, sometimes you like people wonder, like, why should I ask this tzaddik or this rebbe or this, for a bracha? Sometimes a person has a big tzibur behind them, or even a little tzibur behind them. Somebody has a tzibur behind them, has a certain siyata d'shmaya. There's a certain siyata d'shmaya because you're not coming to him as a individual, as a piece of straw. You're coming as a basket. He's representing. I'll tell you something very interesting. I remember when I was at Rav Gifter Alav Shalom's Levaya, Rashiva tells. It was in New York, Levaya. I went to Levaya. It was unbelievable crowd, and like it was real lots of that Levaya. I mean, thousands and thousands and thousands of people in New York. Somebody else was there. Were you there? It was in Yeshiva Farakwe. I think that's a son-in-law of his. So it was somewhere there, like what? Darchei Torah, yeah, that's what it was. But I remember one of the Maspidim, I think, if I'm not mistaken, it was the Munkacher Rebbe, who had some kind. I think he learned in Tells. So the Munkacher Rebbe from Borough Park, when he spoke, he said, Samir, an interessanter Zach. He finds it very interesting that. Rav Gifter is Abba Talmud Rav Gifter, but Rav Gifter was like in Cleveland, out of the way, and people heard about him, and he gave great speeches, and it was a gadol, big Rosh Yeshiva. But thousands of people should be coming, thousands of people should be crying, thousands of people should feel some kind of tsar. What are you feeling already? That Rav Gifter. So he said that Bechlal, the pshat in a gadol, is that it's a nefesh hakolelas. If Klal Yisrael comes together as one, so then the gadol has a certain. He represents that koach of tzibur. He's not just a great man amongst men. He is the tzibur. He is the tzibur. So if he is the tzibur, so everybody feels it because it's the tzibur. It's not his. Gifter died. That was his point. Did you ever talk to Rav Gifter? So Rav Gifter died. Did you ever learn any of his Torah? So Rav Gifter died. So he died. I mean, it's okay, very sad he died, but what am I crying about exactly? And no kasher with him. The answer is that there's a Vaila Ilfadav and Carbonita. The pshat is that it's the integrity of the basket has just diminished, and everybody feels that hole, whether you feel it in your mind, whether you feel it in your heart, whether you feel it in your shava, you feel it. Then he said something very interesting, and he said that particularly when a tzaddik dies or a gadol dies, and now he's in the olam of neshamas, this you have to be the Munkatcher Rebbe to say, now he's in the olam of the Shabbos, now Babash, everybody feels a hole in their neshama. So you see a certain, a certain koach of tzibur. And you also see, just to give another obvious example, you see when Klal Yisrael came into Eretz Yisrael, and went to Yericho, and then they started to have him Hatzlach, it says in Tanakh. So somebody was Moel B'cherem. Okay, Achan was Moel B'cherem, but there were millions of people. But it was somebody drilled a hole in the boat. That's the pshat. Somebody, who is it? It's going to be hard to find, and it's a tiny hole, but we are sinking. Somebody drilled a hole in the boat. And this is what you see those first few prakim in Yoshua. They're not stopping until they're finding out who drilled it. And they have to get rid of them in the harshest way because you're rooting the integrity of the basket. This guy, there's this mazig on a ship, big yacht. He keeps drilling holes in the boat. You got to throw him overboard, otherwise you're going to kill us all. So you have this idea of the klal. So I just want to say something before we finish off. Like here's just something that the Gedolim have said. And, maybe we could understand it just a drop deeper. Like everyone's always looking. Especially now, as far as Tshuva and everything. Everybody's always looking for an extra thing. It's hard here in Eretz Yisrael. We already eat Pas Yisrael. We already drink Chalav Yisrael. We already, none of us talk Lashon Hara. It's hard to find something. What are you gonna be bachmerin already? You're not gonna eat. Somebody said somebody asked me yesterday, is it an Indian during a Saras Tshuva not to eat Rabbanut Yerushalayim Bahadra? I said, well, you're really scraping the bottom of the barrel here with the Torah saying. But he's like he's not machmer koya voice hashana. Is there such a zach of apparently we ran out of things. We ran out of things. Like everything. What else are you gonna do already? But yeah. So I have an idea, and the idea is what can we think of, something geschmack, like to be machmeran, not forever, just for the 10 days. So I think that the idea is do something for the tzibur that you wouldn't do otherwise. I think this is really on a very, very real level. I think that's what the Devorah is saying. It has the number of benefits is gewaldic, but do something for the tzibur. It doesn't have to be like you have to become the mayor. That's not a good example at all. Because we have to. Do something for the tzibur means like be from the asar rishonim. Be part of the basket, improve the integrity of the basket. Do something tziburdik, because if you do something tziburdik, you have a whole different. First of all, you're paying attention to the fact, if we do this, we're paying attention to the fact that the neshamas are klulai zebazeh, as the Devorah says. It's a connection between the people. So that's right away, as the Kedushas Levi said, getting right back to HaKadosh Baruch Hu of Zeh kol haTorah kula zil gemara. This is everything. So that's one thing, the neshamas haklulais. The other thing is you're mamash bringing Shechina into the world by being a tzibur. But the most important, or I shouldn't say most important, but the most selfish part about it is the biggest reason to do it selfishly is that you have a whole different din when you're mishtatif atzmai mimah tzibur. You're a whole different thing. You're not any longer an individual. You're a tzibur. We allow even avrayanim to come to Kol Nidrei. You're invited to our tzibur, but you got to make the tzibur. So making the tzibur is then you become like the difference, not just like the difference between Moshe Rabbeinu before the Chet HaEgel, Moshe Rabbeinu after the Chet HaEgel, where he became an ish tzibur, but you become the difference between a rock and a plant. The difference between a plant and an animal and a tzibur. So anybody who really figures out something to do for the tzibur, you're putting it, you're in a whole different league it's like not such a hard thing to do. It's actually a quite nice thing to do to be osik with tzarech zibur. But if you can't do it all, you're busy, work, everything. I just, I'm not, it's but. I'm not giving musar, I'm just making a suggestion here. If you can't do it all year, so if you're looking for like what's the pas akum, or what's the pas yisrael of us, or as you made shuva, the pas yisrael is like you can really get involved with the tzibur. I don't think it has to be anything so dramatic either. I mean, if everyone according to their koach, I think that if somebody sees a problem, people need tissues. There's no tissues on the table in the shoulder. You daven, bring tissues. You did something for the tzibur. Now you're part of the tzibur. Am I putting a tissue in my pocket? Am I putting tissues on the paper? If you can do more, give $100,000. I'm not. Whatever it is that fits. But it just seems to me like, and you got to rack your brains. You have to be creative a little bit. If you think about whatever tzibur you belong to, this one, the next one, whatever you consider your tzibur, the larger Beit Shemesh community, Israel, Jewish people. If you think about the tzibur at large and think, what tiny little thing can I do to make the tzibur a stronger tzibur, or even create a tzibur of something in some way. But what can I do to make it a little bit of gashmias, just a little bit of gashmias for the tzibur? Clean up the park, do something. So you've now entered into the paradigm shift. You've now stepped into the paradigm shift where now you're coming to HaKadosh Baruch Hu as a tzibur. What do you mean? I'm not tzibur. I'm an individual. No, you brought those tissues. So those tissues made you now an ish klal, and now you're part of that kolusan shel neshamas, and you're all one. I think it's such a chashuv thing. Huh?
You said the Rav said before that also for example the Meraglim, even the Averos also can be part of it. So the moment you become, this tzibur we're all tzaddikim, like the Rav said, we don't speak lashon hara. But I'm saying that if a person decides to be part of a tzibur, in order to benefit from the tzibur new status, but it potentially can also damage him if the tzibur have averos which he might not have.
Right. So you need to get part of a good tzibur.
Well, no, I'm asking, like, if somebody is, for example, if somebody really does not speak lashon hara ever, and now he's part of the tzibur, and there's a lashon hara in the tzibur, what happens? Does he now get that chelik of the?
Could be.
No.
That's why our block.
Why do you say no? That's the block idea.
Yeah.
The element of the cloud, of the kalul is not. Is that it creates shops the way maybe it's not no, but the way I understood.
But what if he's saying a bad piece of straw gets into the basket?
Right, but the element.
An achan gets into the basket.
What you've created is not just is not 10 with what they have, with whatever it is have to provide, but it's a unit of the 10, and presumably you can take from, and that creates a new reality. And the reality isn't necessarily the sum of the parts.
But let's say part of that is lacking in integrity.
Well, since you're not, then you're going to elevate it.
Okay.
Always
That's what I'm saying. That, like the Blach view was like, this is my kehilla, this is my shechina. The other side of the equation is that I'm in a new reality over here.
Do you walk into the 945 and say, these are the Asar Yishanim? No, thank you.
I heard from. By the way, I just say like Rav Scheidberg, my Rebbe, it was a big gadol, no? Big tzaddik. So, I don't know where. Sometimes I used to look at him and think that okay, he looks like the rest of us. He's sitting there, but the truth is that it wasn't like the rest of us. So it knows what he's thinking about. Kabbalah was makubal, and every toisus, every ksais, everything was in his head. So it looks like pasha, but it's not pasha. Like what's going on. And then when you talk to him, he was like in some kind of a different world. But just like this gadol, this tzaddik, so would always carry around an extra pen in his pocket in case he would see somebody who's looking for a pen. He would just show him a pen. And in the real good old days, he used to carry around matches that if somebody was trying to light a cigarette, I'm talking about before it was known that it was so dangerous, across the table, the Mishnah Bereshit, I remember throwing through the matches. And he would now he didn't have a lot of room in his pockets. He had a lot of ammunition there. But he used to carry around. I just think he used to carry around a little like can of air freshener. That if he felt that he was in a place, and not because he was an istinus, because he wasn't such, that he found a place where there was like a reach ra, he would be mazak at the rabbin give a spritz. And he would tell people, just think, if you go somewhere, you see something needed for the tzibur, like it's such an unbelievable thing. So this is what he would say. He would say, so I'm sure he did it in big ways too. I mean, he built yeshivas, he built a city, what's the question? But I really think it doesn't have to be. You don't have to build a city. You don't have to build a park. You don't have to build a youth center. You just to do something, be mishativ with the tzibur. But he said that you see that Moshe. This is something he said very often. Moshe shakol keneged kolam is lashon Chazal. So what does shakol mean? What does shakol mean? It's not a trick question. Equal. But what does it really mean? Weight is the same. So it's like a funny. You could have said shaveh, or kick. Like what's shakol? There's a lot of lashonos. So he said that when you talk about weight, if you look the way Chazal would have looked at it. When they looked at a scale, they didn't talk about digital thing. We were talking about a scale in times of Chazal, so it was like two sides on that had to be. So you put the weight here, and you put the chicken over here. So the balance. It's all about the balance. So now, what happens if you take off the weight? Chicken falls to the ground. The other side jumps up. The Moshe Shakul, if you have, this is what he understood Chazal meant when they said this, because this was the scales that they were talking about, the shekel that they were talking about. That if you put Moshe Rabbeinu on one side of the scale and Klal Yisrael on the other side of the scale, you've got a perfect balance. But what's happening there really is one side is holding the other side up. In his lashon, ein instructing sveiten. Each one is holding the other one up. So what you're witnessing with an old time scale, maybe even a new one, I just have no idea how they work. But what you're witnessing with an old time scale is one side carrying the other. If you jump ship, the other one is up. So the Moshe Rabbeinu, when he's standing on Har Sinai, if he has Klal Yisrael behind him, he's part of that tzibur. He's machzik mamad. But berega that they jump ship, so he's off the scale. He's off, and it can't be. You need the balance in the bria. So just a simple. I just want to give the simple eights. I feel. I'm looking myself for just little things. I saw somebody yesterday. It was such a beautiful thing. Like the carpet here was. How they roll up the corners. So we saw somebody almost tripped on it. I saw a cave later out during the day with a thing of water and stones and a weight and this and that. It seemed very good, like you're taking away a hezek from the Rishus Harabim. Isn't there a million cases like that? So just one small little thing. Look at the Kabbalah of it. Up in Kabbalah, all of a sudden nefesh kol lusam. You're part of the neshama klali just by getting out of your little and going out for the tzibur. Okay, we'll go further.
We're talking about neshamas, but really talking about goof, because it's people we're talking about. We're not talking about neshamas in Shemayim. We're talking about people. So that's the confusing part.
It's all one package. It's all one package. That's why it doesn't say you. Because it's all the same package, the goof and the neshama. It's all one underversion. All right. Did that work?
Yeah, I think so.